The US doesn't have to pay off its $31 trillion mountain of debt, according to Paul Krugman.
It was a statement made by Nobel Prize-winning economist Paul Krugman.
The US doesn't actually have to pay off its $31 trillion mountain of debt, according to top economist Paul Krugman, hitting back at the idea that government finances can be compared to household balance sheets in an op-ed weeks before the US possibly defaults on some obligations. Though individual borrowers are expected to pay off debts, the same isn't true for governments, Krugman argued in a column for the New York Times on Friday. That's because unlike people, governments don't die, and they gain more revenue with each passing generation. Governments, then, must service their debts, say pay interest and repay principal when bonds come due, but they don't necessarily have to pay them off. They can issue new bonds to pay principal on old bonds and even borrow to pay interest as long as overall debt doesn't rise too much faster than revenue, he added. Though the debt-to-GDP ratio hovered around 97% last year, interest payments on that debt is only around $395 billion, according to the Office of Management and Budget, or around 1% of last year's GDP. Historically, it's also unusual for governments to pay off large debts, Krugman said. Such was the case for Great Britain, which has largely held on to the debt it incurred as far back as the Napoleonic Wars. Krugman's argument comes amid growing contention over the US debt level, with policymakers still sparring over the conditions they want to raise the country's borrowing limit. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy has said he would reject a short-term debt ceiling increase unless spending cuts are negotiated, having proposed a bill that would slash around $4.5 trillion on spending.